everybody. Welcome to Celestial You. And today we have the wonderful Laura Barat. Hi, Laura.
Hi. Hello. Thanks for having
We,
me.
oh, of course. I can't tell you how much good feedback I've gotten on our last prediction video for 2023 for Iran. The
Mhm.
subscribers and the feedback I got was that we did a great job and that many of the events, if not all the events we predicted, did come about in 2023. And
Good.
I'm really excited to do the 2024. I think one I wanted to talk about some of the things I'm aware of that we that the Persian community has been kind of chatting about in my comment section, and also just um, give you guys a really good understanding of what's happening in 2024. Laura and I are going to talk about the chart of the Lunar New Year, which
Yep.
tells us the themes and the events that are going to happen until the next Lunar New Year in 2025. And then Laura has also prepared the chart of the revolution to review that as well, just to give us a perspective on some of the transits that were happening then and how that ties into some of the current events that we're having now. So
Yeah.
that's an overview of where we're going with this. And so I'll just chat about a couple things that I learned. I know I got some comments on my video that said, you know, uh, what we spoke about last time in 2023 regarding, the unveiling of women and the movement of women life freedom. And
hmm
somebody in my comments said, it's not all about removing the veils. And I do know that. We do know that. In the 2023 chart, it was happening. There was some scorpionic elements happening at that time. And the unveiling was much more than just the physical removing of the veil.
Well, yeah,
And
I
in
mean, it's a
fact,
symbol.
it's a what?
It's a symbol.
It's symbolic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's symbolic of returning of the power to women, but also to, the Iranian people. And when we go over this chart, you're going to see that theme of, the power to the people just starts to cement really in this next
hmm
year. So I wanted
hmm
to kind of clarify that, yes, we're aware of that. And also something that my mother told me a couple months ago is that she said, I have to tell you that the women life freedom movement has been hijacked by foreign powers. And I wanted to say about that every movement that I'm aware of gets hijacked. I can think of like in the 60s where the hippies were hijacked,
Oh, yeah. Big time.
where the CIA like got Manson to go and like kill a bunch of people as part of this MK Ultra or dosing people with LSD. They wanted to discredit the hippies, so they infiltrated the movement.
Yeah.
Remember
That's so
that?
funny you mentioned that. I just watched that movie last night.
What was the movie?
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen the
Yeah, it's
movie, but I
about the
know the
Manson
story.
hippies. That's part of the story, the Manson hippies.
Wow,
But
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
had read
so
that book Helter Skelter years ago, and it was obvious that this was way more than just some cult leader going and telling these hippies to kill these people.
right.
You had Roman Polanski involved, or he was a big director. It just didn't make any sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're
And
right. They hijack everything.
They hijack
It's
everything. And so,
mhm.
all of these movements, the BLM movement was hijacked very quickly. Like seriously, all of our modern movements will be to some extent manipulated or infiltrated. And so I don't think that that takes away. I want to make this point. I don't think that takes away from the movement
No,
because
it
the
doesn't.
intention and the growth and the shift in society and the shift in mentality is still taking place. The intention of the people of Iran or the expatriates who live in other countries, but whose heart is with Iran and with the Persian people, that movement is part of the diaspora. It's still strong. It's still going. And it's not something that foreign powers can dismantle, even if they are trying to do so.
Mhm.
Um, they can't really do that. And we're probably going to go into that more in the chart. And another piece of this that I wanted to comment on, because I do receive some feedback, is that I've also heard in the Persian diaspora talks about how there is a glorification of the time when the Shah was in power, and that some people seem to be wanting to go back to that time. And I have to say that going back to a monarchy or going back to a system of governance where it's either an oligarchy or a monarchy is just not a part of the Aquarian age. It's just not a part of the mentality of what's happening over the next 20 years that we're going to rapidly see changes in. And so we'll talk about this chart, but really, that's not something that the ancient Persians needed. They did have an egalitarian society. They did have equality within their society. They had both male and masculine and feminine leadership as a part of the society. And I think that if anything, if we're going to draw from the past, we would probably be drawing from the distant past, where there resembled a society that was more integrated rather than top down. So I just wanted to put that out there, kind of based on the comments that I've seen. And then we
Yeah.
can just go into 2024.
Mm. Sounds good.
Yeah. So I took some notes about this, and I don't know how you want to start, Laura, but
Yeah, you can share your screen and then I'll share my
okay, I'm
screen
going to share my
when I want you.
screen to put up
Okay.
the chart. Okay,
Hmm.
so based on this chart for the Lunar New Year, which is the same as the Chinese New Year, which happened last weekend, this new moon is in Aquarius with planets Pluto and Mercury in the third house. And I also like to look at where I first look at what the ruler of the moon, which the moon rules Cancer, and what house
Right.
that's in. And so that's the eighth house.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's indicative of continued changes happening
Yeah.
in the emotional diaspora of Iran. And then
Yeah.
also I just look at the sun, and the sun rules Leo here in the ninth house. And the ninth house is for me about the future of Iran, and it's
Right.
about the
The
philosophy.
direction, the purpose, the new
Yes,
purposeful direction of the country
yes.
changing massively.
Changing massively the purpose and the direction this um, of this movement of Iran. And also it being in Aquarius means that this is necessarily a movement for the people,
Hmm.
particularly with regard to Saturn being in Pisces. That is going to be more and more revelations. I really see this being more and more revelations about the lives of government, about releasing a lot of the illusions that the government has been imposing on the people, because we've just been going through that ever since Saturn moved into Pisces as a collective. We've been releasing more and more illusions, more and more mental and psychological control mechanisms as
Mm-hmm.
well. And so I see that continuing. This is in the fourth house. Saturn rules the house where this new moon is. And so Saturn is essentially setting the tone for an emotional, because it's the fourth house, emotional, or the people of Iran going through that shedding of that layer of illusion, and also release of, in the best way, release of fear. So becoming fearless with regard
Yeah,
to, shedding that illusion. I don't know if that you saw that same kind of dynamic
I did.
happening.
Absolutely. That's what Saturn is designed to do. It's
Yeah.
designed to have us release our fears and release things that no longer belong and no longer support what we are. And Saturn being in the fourth house is the populace, the people.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so there is a lot of shedding of illusion. There's going to be, a lot of unhappiness in the population with the current leadership and what's happening in the country, the oppression, basically. Um,
Yeah. The culture too is shifting, because it's basically Saturn asking to shed any sort, it really, Pisces is also government. And so shedding the lies of government, and that is an uncomfortable position because, like you said, Saturn causes suffering, it causes death, and that weighs heavily on the emotional body or the diaspora or the culture because it's in the fourth house. So
mhm.
this is felt deeply, that really, I see the people of Iran feeling like they have no choice but to eliminate this veil, this illusion, this sickness within their government. And so, that's how I see this coming out.
Yeah, it's going to also involve religion too, because of
Yes.
Saturn is directly giving a planetary aspect onto Jupiter. Yeah, almost exact. And Jupiter's in the sixth house of enemies, competitors, problems.
Yeah.
So there's going to be problems with religion, religious leadership, even because that ninth house sun
Yes.
is with the eighth lord, the moon. The people want massive change. The moon is the people. The moon is rules the public.
Yes.
So the public wants a change in their direction, their purpose, and also the religion. I don't, are there, I know Iran is a theocracy right now. Are the people wanting to be really religious, or are they no?
No, in fact, they've really not wanted to be religious. My understanding of the Islamic Revolution was that they chose, or were handed, the Islamic Revolution in contrast to sort of communism or becoming a puppet of the West. And so they sort of got forced into accepting a theology that, maybe seemed backwards to them.
Yeah.
And it encroached slowly too. It started out, less of totalitarian and just became kind of more and more restrictive. But in the last 10 years, there has been an upwelling and a rising against this philosophy. And in that time, actually, most Iranians became highly educated. And
Hmm.
many of the population changed. They became predominantly college educated. And so there was also the intellectualizing of the populace and the awakening of the populace in terms of looking at things less from a lens of religion, for sure, and more
Mhm.
towards, economic growth and what's best for Iran. But also, yeah, I think Saturn being here and this chart just shows a willingness to release the philosophy. And also I will say too, because Jupiter rules the ascendant or the lagna,
Mhm. Yeah.
this is philosophical, and it's a conflict too, because this is the sixth house. So I see
Yeah,
this being
there's
more conflictual
yeah,
with,
it is
and
very
and if you
conflictual.
follow that through from Taurus, which is about your truths and really affecting your daily life in the sixth house, it's going to affect the daily lives of people, but also their health, their public health, and their finances in terms of their work, like what they actually do and how they speak their truth. And there's going to be outbursts there as well, and
Mhm.
rebellions there as well. But if you follow that through to Venus, who rules Taurus here's the political struggle. It's like a financial, political
Yeah,
split.
yeah, the
The,
finances are going to be important. The controller of the money supply, banks
the
can come into
banks.
this. Yeah, because of course the second house is a big financial house and there's a battle going on.
Mhm. And it's the
Eventually,
battle with Mars, and then Mars rules this 12th house. And, because Scorpio tells a story about power, control, toxicity, and the 12th house being the government, it's this idea that they want to overcome that. And then there's, with the North Node and Aries, that's still the idea that it's about what they desire, and they desire financial stability and wealth and opportunity. They want opportunity, and they don't want things stolen from them anymore. um that's how I see this.
yeah. Yeah, well, there's a new turnover in how they relate to other countries too, because of the new moon with Mercury, and Mercury rules the seventh, which is foreign countries.
Yes.
So, and there's an element too of fighting with those other countries. I know that already happened, but that happened before the Lunar New Year. But that may continue on into this new year. That shows up to me in this chart too.
Yeah, and that's gonna be part and parcel because it's happening in the third house, and third house brings conflicts of I like
Yeah, it does.
communication and
Hmm. It's a
discourse
conflictual house.
and
It's the eighth from the eighth. So that principle, it gives a secondary connotation of the eighth house. And the eighth house lord goes with the sun and Mercury. So there's conflict for sure. There's definitely
and
um
the conflict is, I would say, a lot to do with their media, communication, censorship, people wanting to like address what's going on. I think this is kind of a fight for being able to speak to what's going on in the country, and a fight for truth of the people's truth rather to come out, rather than to just allow for censorship and not being represented, essentially, because it's Aquarius, and Aquarius is all about, representation, and it's an air sign, so this
it's a
is going
very
to happen very
humanitarian
quickly.
sign.
there's going to be like you said, some conflicts with other countries and getting involved and things like that, and how that manifests in the reputation of Iran, even. And so that's all kind of
Right, yeah.
happening. It already started happening. But I don't see this being like a hot war. I see this being a war of finances, maybe having to do with transportation in the third house,
Yeah,
borders.
that can very well be manifested too. You know, when you have the ascendant lord in the sixth house, it looks like there is a battle or enemies happening. There's an attack. Because this is the sixth house is the house of wounds and getting attacked or attacking.
It
It's
seem though stealth because Saturn being in the fourth, I almost feel like it's like more of the like covert ops. Or do you see this actually
well, yeah,
coming
that
about
could
it?
very well be because Saturn is making that direct aspect
Yeah,
onto Jupiter.
yeah.
And I was looking for the 12th Lord, and that usually will cover things up, but
It's
uh
Mars.
yeah. Um,
And
but I don't
Mars
think
can
that
actually, in this position, because Venus is sometimes politicians can create like not
this
just
actually can
conflict, but
this can have a politician or a diplomat. Venus is the diplomacy, and all the diplomats can have some major problems with them, or
yeah, in fact,
have
it's
problems
like,
with diplomats in Iran from different
yes,
countries. So yeah,
and
that can definitely happen.
Mars also ruling the fifth house and fall from grace and
Right.
this, and then the 12th house, Scorpio, that's toxicity. So there's definitely going to be some sort of political fallout with diplomats or politicians,
Absolutely.
some
I
kind
see a
of
lot
like
of a change
comeuppance
in leadership even.
in leadership.
Hmm.
It almost feels like the stuffing is going to come out in a weird way. And it's going to maybe start out being covert, but then it's going to be more obvious
Hmm.
because it's going to affect financial relationships, and the populace will definitely know about this.
Yeah. There can be a new beginning around uh, the press and
Yes.
what information is allowed to come out. Uh,
Information technology, even ways around
mhm,
censorship.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Third house is very much, it's a new beginning in communications, in allowing the free flow of information. The third house is a big house of information and gathering all the information needed. Mercury is
It's
the planet of information. Mercury in the third house is a double whammy. So people are going to get what they need uh, as far as like, and are going to hear the truth more.
they're going to hear the truth more, and it's also going to change the education system
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
Like it's
That's another thing.
infiltrating the
Mhm.
education and the kids, like the kids in the
Right.
education, even in primary school,
Yeah, that's
the
the
kids
third
will be
house.
aware.
That's third house education,
Yeah.
the initiatory instructions.
Yes.
Like university is the fifth and the ninth, but the third
Yes.
house is, you know, when you're in middle school, elementary school, high school.
It's
So
almost like the fifth and the ninth because the sun rules the ninth. it's almost like the universities are expanding this to the children and the education, saying like, hey, you've been lied to about the real reality of our nation, of our people, and we're
Mm-hmm.
done with that. And we're actually going to start telling the real truth in schools and like to the kids and training them in a different ideology. And that ideology is going to be Aquarian. And Aquarian ideologies are all about the power to the people and democratic structures and new and
Yeah,
novel
it's
ways of running
humanitarian.
government,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily going back to communism or going back to monarchies, but something totally new that is evolving.
I know,
Um,
we were talking about this before about how people feel safe with the past, the things that work in the past. If things aren't working right now, it's natural for people to want to go back to the past and go back to that because it worked and it was safe, but it didn't really work or it wouldn't have ended.
and I want to say
It's
something about the past in this chart with Saturn writing this fourth. The fourth house is the past, and Saturn's not going to let us go into the
right.
past. Not in
Exactly.
2020.
Right.
Not,
Yep.
it's not
Saturn is
happening.
designed to get rid of things. That's its job. And when Saturn crosses through a house, it's a 2.5 year period of releasing um the significations of that house that no longer belong. So parts of the past that are no longer important, that no longer belong are let go of.
And it's basically the ways in which the government has mind controlled and lied to the people. And that's what they're losing. And don't forget Neptune's there. So Neptune is, you know, in its highest form is correcting that. It's correcting
Mm-hmm.
that. And yeah, it's still going to be a source of confusion while it's happening, but I think it's doing a necessary correction and elevating the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Absolutely.
why too it's not going to be a monarchy or a communist or whatever. It's going to be something new because this has to be a higher level conversation, and Saturn here is going to just eliminate anything that isn't true, the full truth. And even though it's kind of hazy while this is all happening, this is kind of happening in the background while the populace just starts to roll out a new curriculum for everybody. They're just like, nope, we're gonna go in this direction. And then of course the powers and the governments are still clinging to their stories, but it's not working. Like people see through it. They see right through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they absolutely do. The people are ready. It's just a matter of finding a way to do it. And the thing is, they have the courage. They have the courage. They have a lot more courage than a lot of other peoples around the world to go against their government because their government can be brutal. But they still do it. They still go out and protest. They still are trying to move forward.
And I will say too, Mars exalted in Capricorn, Mars is going to, I think, get rid of some of the barriers that the people have to support to this second house's liquidity and things like that, where they're able to have the financial um, independence to do something else and maybe even thwart the political figures in some way, setting up their own financial systems or at least finding resources to do something very different and starting with truth, starting with Mercury speaking truth and Pluto, wanting to see that change, that evolution
Mm-hmm.
for the people.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this chart. The third house, the sixth house has an important planet in it. And you have a square, excuse me, of Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury, of course,
Mm-hmm.
is the seventh and the 10th. The seventh house is foreign countries. Jupiter is the ruler of the ascendant, and the fourth house, the people. That means that, yeah, there is some co-opt. There are foreign elements trying to co-opt what the people want, a people's movement, a grassroots movement. And there are foreign elements at odds with what the people of Iran want. And they're trying to manipulate it. But the world, not just one country, but the world is waking up to the machinations of the powers that be, quote unquote, all over, and trying to fight against it. So I think that
I think it comes back to unity consciousness and the evolution of the Aquarian new moon throughout, for 2024. It's understanding that we are all the same and that we, want the same things. And so, yeah, I mean, these machinations that are happening, these conflicts that are happening, these land grab, resource grabs that are going on are certainly going to be the case.
yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, that's not the theme. The theme is here with the people in Aquarius. And, this is the next step. This is the next step. It is a conflict, but it's also the uprising and the ground roots changes. And this is a big evolutionary step for
It
the
is.
nation.
Hmm. I'm excited for Persia and Iran. I love studying history,
Yeah.
and they had a great civilization. Just full of knowledge, learning. You know, um, I just hope for that to come back, and not
Yeah.
just for Iran, but for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the Persian Empire was, had a lot of knowledge, and were very advanced, and you had a great astrology in Persia.
Yes.
You had the Magi, just a lot of higher philosophical knowledge, and I would love to see that, a rebirth in that. So
Yeah. And Saturn tends to refine our philosophies in Pisces. And I see that, we take what's good from that Piscean era, but we're definitely stepping into. So what we do is the people of Iran are given an invitation to take from the philosophies of, say, the Sufis and Rumi, the good parts of, Islam, but yet we're moving towards an Aquarian philosophy, which is a rebellion, it's individual religion, it's sovereignty. So all of this is like refining who Persians are and who they can be well into the future. This is going to dictate, because the sun does rule the ninth house, the direction of the country. And this kind of pivot to a different way of being that started last year for sure, but that continues to foment this year.
mhm.
So
Yeah, I
it's
remember
really nice. Actually, when I read this, I was a little afraid to read the chart, to be quite honest, because everything's so trepidatious in the world. But then after I read it, I said, we got a lot of fight in us, and as the
Oh
Persian
yeah,
people, and
absolutely.
we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this in a dignified way, and we're gonna do this in a good spirit and friendliness and knowledge, and it's gonna happen. And just one other thing I wanted to say to be encouraging is I did see a beautiful, beautiful prediction of the year 2300. And it was a channeling, which I'll link below in the notes. And the woman came on and remote viewed into the year 2300 and sat with someone from that year who lived in Washington, D.C. And the entire structure of the world was different. And they very much had an Aquarian world. The US had seceded from the Union, and there were 3 different regions, and there were three
Oh, wow.
different parties politically. And then they had talked about how the world had one in many places. They might have different currencies, but they're all equivalent currencies. Which, can you imagine the
Oh,
economic
interesting.
change
Yeah.
of that? Like, and I'm thinking about all this comes down to being valued and overcoming the barriers to being treated poorly in terms of your value. And the second house is value here for the Iranian people. But one of the things that I think about in the Aquarian age is, why do we have banking systems that value one currency of one country's currency above another? Like, are people ever valued higher or lower than other people? And the answer is no. And the answer is going to be no in the future. And so coming into systems of currency that are egalitarian across the globe, I see the people of Iran riding this wave, coming out, being able to foment some type of new form of government, and not ultimately not being under the control of totalitarian powers, just as I see that for the rest of the world. So
Yeah,
it
that's
might
what we
take a
all
while,
want.
though.
Yeah. I wish it would happen in our lifetime.
I know, that's the thing, is everybody's ready for the revolution of humanity, right? And I
I'm
do think,
taking vitamins, so maybe I'll live till 2300.
well, that was the other thing, that this woman predicted that the lifespan would be between 100 and 150 years for common folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
That's what it used to be in
they're
the different
living
ages.
longer, they're having different technologies. It's not this future that's, I mean, some people have decided to go towards technology and merging with technology, but others have rebelled against it. And
Yeah.
there's choice. This is the thing about Aquarius. There are choices in Aquarius.
Hmm.
You don't have to follow something you don't want to follow. Yes, there'll be power grabs and try to unify people in weird faux democracies and things like that. But at the same time, Aquarius is so much more sophisticated than that. There are 10 solutions to things. It's not just one way of doing things. In fact, the one way of doing things, the Piscean era and the religions, is dying. And then she talked about how the religions just basically fell away and they became Unitarian, and they converted the churches to temples of Unitarian, kind of unified individual personal religions, things like that. And I guess I wanted to share that with the people who view this video, because I want you to know that even though times can be rough, that we in humanity we hold this hope of a better future for all.
Yeah. This is the chart for the beginning of the Iranian, the new government, basically.
Okay.
And it's when Khomeini proclaimed that they had a new Republic of Iran. And that, so this is the chart usually used. This actually makes a lot of sense to me. But so what's important to look in this chart for long-term trends is the outer planets, because of course countries live a lot longer than people, usually, not always, but usually they do. And so in this chart, you've got Pluto just moved into the 7th house, Neptune is in the 8th house, and Uranus is in the 10th house. And so Pluto's going to be in the 7th house for 20 years. Uranus, I forgot when Uranus moves into Gemini, but I just want to say that it's in the 10th house. You've got 2 outer planets in angles here. When Pluto goes over that 7th cusp, I think that the government will completely change.
Wow.
That's going to be within 20 years. Because it's going to be aspecting the 7th first axis. And
So the whole identity is just completely going to shift, change in the next 20 years.
Absolutely. When Pluto gets to, so around, that is 1109. Oh, wow. It just went. Okay. So January 15th, 2031 is a time around that time. And that's another, what, 6-7 years. So about 7 years from now, it looks like Iran will be completely transformed. Because Pluto will be aspecting exactly that, the ascendant. Now, I'm not exactly sure the ascendant is this degree, but it's close to it. Okay. Because it was between 2 and 3 p.m. that this happened, or that he made the new government. And I just put 2:30.
Okay.
So, but it's all within the sign of Leo. The ascendant, even if it was at 2, the ascendant would not have moved out of Leo into Cancer.
And so this is actually consistent with what that channeler said about looking back on our time from the future. They said that year 28, 29, and 30, there would be a lot of war, like ideological civil war in the US and other countries. And then after that is where things really change. But there's just so much like breaking apart of the fractionating of ideologies throughout the world that occurs on the 2028, 2029, and 2030. And so it makes
Oh, wow.
sense.
So she said that.
Yes, she said that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I thought
that
I was seeing war come.
That, we're all like, so within the US, that's going to look like the union breaking up.
Yeah.
Which,
I think that is very inevitable at this point. They're keeping it together with bribery and extortion. So
yeah,
but
it's silly. And we don't, there's a lot of divisions, very divided in the US. And but I think that that's going to intensify, and really the war, it's not necessarily, it's more of a inner war. It's like, it's more of the splitting of the earth in terms of high timelines and low timelines, or in terms of thwarting the powers that were. So
right.
That's the pinnacle of that are those years. And so then right after that, if Iran hits their major change, that makes perfect sense to come into alignment with the rest of humanity.
Yeah, I agree completely. In my mystery school I was telling you about, they say that the human race is mutating
Yeah.
and that only, some people are and some people aren't. Uh, so that kind
Yeah,
of lines up
that's
with
a
the
more
same idea
uncomfortable
of,
subject because I've heard yeah, I've heard of the split. I talk about the split. In fact, in my readings lately and in my predictions, I have had to give two separate predictions. I give a high vibe and a low vibe on all
oh,
my
yeah.
predictions because
Oh, wow. Interesting.
I've had to split them because they're so
Mhm.
like they're so dramatically different. And it really is that way. The more you move in a certain direction, the more possibilities come to you that are higher vibrational, for example. But if you
Mhm.
move into an involution, you can actually go down. And that negative timeline is, it's super dark. It's just that it doesn't necessarily translate into your daily life if you're going towards a different direction. And there is some debate as to whether the split is a physical split or a cataclysmic split or, that kind of thing. But I think that I think that it's probably going to be a natural splitting and not a cataclysmic. There will be cataclysmic events, but I think it's more of an aging out of like the populace where many people will just age out. A lot of this philosophy is very old and decrepit. So, you
Mhm.
know, in terms of the powers that are kind of like white knuckling it. So
Right.
I did hear
Yeah.
something recently too that the idea that the split would be a physical split and we would be separated. I heard that this was actually imposed upon us by the ETs and that they were trying to manipulate and put us into fear with that and like scare us that would be separated from other people. So I don't I don't know if I resonate with that. I think it's something there's something beautiful or something more sophisticated about how this is going to evolve that is not going to be um feeling like separation consciousness, at least to those of us who are, self-improving.
Right.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll let you continue with this. I know I digressed.
Oh, no, no. I mean, another thing too is so Uranus is in the 10th house. That's all about rebellion, revolution against the authoritarian powers
Okay.
right now. And then you have Saturn going through the 8th house. The 8th house is battles, war. Saturn is going over a lot of planets here. So it's getting rid of quite a few things. It's going to get rid of a lot of different things, especially the religion, the religious theocracy, the direction of the country, the purpose of the country. That's all showing up in this chart too, because Mars rules that 9th house. And Saturn is going to go over Mars, it's going to go over K2. It's already passed over Venus, which was the third and the 10th. That was explained itself in all of the suppression of the Venetian impulse that came out, that has been happening up until now. Uh,
Suppression of women.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And right now, where Saturn is squaring the moon, which is also women. Uh, and so, yeah, it, Iran is going to go through a tremendous time of transformation as Saturn moves through this 8th house. And It can very well show up in a change in leadership, but it's not going to get rid of it completely, not until that 2031, I think.
Okay.
That's when the real change happens. And that's probably, from what you've said, worldwide.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's probably aligned with worldwide. And it doesn't surprise me that it's worldwide because that's the way that Aquarius moves forward. It's
right,
moving
right.
forward
It's
with
very humanitarian.
yeah,
Another thing about this
humanitarian.
too that I thought was interesting. So in this chart, you have the sun in the ninth house, and the sun is the leader, basically the government. And the government's in the ninth house of religion. So it's a theocracy. That's what he started, a theocracy.
Yeah.
So that really makes a lot of sense. But right now you have Rahu moving through here,
Yeah.
which is, it's not as slow as a slower moving planet, one of the outer planets, but it's a 1.5 year transit. It'll be over in a year from now. And so when Rahu hits that sun, that can very well be a time of, upheaval in the government, massive changes in the government, something totally unexpected. It can also be foreign interference with the government because of Rahu.
And it's a
Being
disruption to the leadership of the
right,
country
right, and the direction, the religion, even,
and the religion.
yeah, because of the
Oh
ninth
my
house.
gosh. It's
All
happening,
within
guys. It's
between now
happening.
and in next January. That's when Rahu moves out of Aries.
Yes.
But and there's going to be an eclipse in April. So that should be interesting. That'll be around 20 degrees, but
And that's just going to jostle it further because that's what eclipses do. They just create
right, they give something completely unexpected.
unexpected.
Sometimes eclipses can be good.
Yes.
It's just something you're not expecting. And then funnily enough, I just looked and Saturn right now is exactly opposite the Saturn of Iran. It's like, I'll put it up in the middle here. Saturn is at 819 Pisces, 817 Virgo.
Yep.
So yeah, it's definitely a symbology of Saturn doing its job of, it's like a half return, an
Half
opposition
return and a
of getting,
balancing. Because I think
yeah,
Saturn in the second is like a position of financial control and rigidity.
mhm,
And then,
mhm,
but in the eighth, it's the loss of control. It's the crisis. It's
right.
it's really pulling away
Yeah,
from that.
when you have Saturn going through the eighth house in your natal chart, that's usually a time a person changes profession or they change something within their profession in a big way. Because Saturn is our duties, our responsibilities, things our tedious, boring work we have to do. So in a country, when it's going through the eighth house, the responsibilities, the duties change. The everyday day-to-day things, the drudgery that needs to be done to keep the country going goes through a transformation.
And it's the
So
transformation happening where Saturn essentially asks you to face your fears in that position. So, and
right.
in this chart, it's going to be facing the fear of going against the controls
Mm-hmm.
and the powers that were the structures that were the systems of support. So they're really like going against that here.
Yeah. Yeah, quite a bit. It's very an interesting time for Iran. I wish they
I
would
mean,
see. We don't know, like, we don't get a lot of information of what's happening over there. Once in a while, you will. They never report on it here in the American press
I know.
or even in the British press. I look at those too. There's really not a lot of information coming out. So you really have to dig. Like sometimes I'll go on Times of India because they have an English section. And they talk about Iran a lot. So
Yeah, yeah. And it's also like what you hear that's mainstream is just probably going to be propaganda. So it's hard to
right.
get the real pulse of it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it is. And it's like that everywhere, unfortunately. You know, the mainstream press is just completely compromised.
the
So,
press is completely compromised. It does sound like though 2024 Iran does get to a form of expression that they can communicate through. So, and that might be through a new technology. So I think
yeah.
the seeds are planted at least, and this is falling in line with the rest of the world as well.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
I-
definitely. It's a difficult process to go through a massive change when you have such a strict, government, authoritarian government, and it's we're coming out of that age. We're coming out of Kali Yuga.
yes.
You know,
Yeah,
there
that we're
I
coming out of the
yeah.
era of war and brutality and that top-down control
Hmm.
system. So, you know, really the breaking, fragmenting and the breaking of the Illuminati as well. So
Yeah.
it's
Oh boy.
exciting. It's exciting times, guys.
Mhm. It
It's
is.
this is can you believe that this is going to happen during our lifetime? We're going to witness so many cultures and so many countries being liberated. And and I mean, really, when I saw that channeler talk about 2300, she spoke about the people who were around at that time, us, as with such reverence and such respect that we ushered in a new era and that we survived this kind of huge shift in humanity that like really doesn't resemble anything else that we've seen for years and years and
Hmm.
years and centuries. So she spoke about us being brave and us ushering in this new way of being in a way that kind of would like we would talk about people in the French Revolution
Oh
this way,
wow.
so she was
Yeah.
talking about our time, exactly this time as a critical time where the US and the world changed direction.
Oh, that's
So
great.
I know.
I think
I'm
so too.
definitely gonna
I
link it
totally,
below and I'll send it to you too, because it's just so like it really filled my heart to know that
yeah, I'd love to check it
we're
out.
going in the right direction and all of that. So
Awesome.
I'll just conclude by saying thanks once again, Laura, for joining us.
Oh yeah.
I
No
love,
problem.
love,
Thank you for
love
having
Laura
me.
and her insights and her wisdom. And
Thank you.
if you want to get a reading, Laura, give your website at least so that they can find you.
Oh yeah, it's Laura Barat astrologer.com.
Yeah, Laura's great. And she has knowledge. She's been doing this for many, many decades. So,
Hmm.
and I just love, love, love her. And hopefully have you back on soon for another discussion.
Yeah, that would be great. I love it.
So thanks, everybody. And we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.